Meeting to order. And this time I'd ask for approval of the minutes of the previous meeting. Supervisor Frazier, seconded by Supervisor Taylor. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, and at this time I will turn it over to Brian.
Thank you, Chairman Wood. Action items on our agenda for today. Most of these are for travel. The first one is for myself to attend the Linstar Users Conference in Hamilton, New York. Linstar is a company that provides the software for our RDs and all that, and we're also looking at software for our HAZMAT consortium for identifying all our equipment. So that's the purpose for that.
All right, do we have a motion? By Supervisor Taylor, seconded by Supervisor Frazier. Any discussion? Supervisor Sieber?
Brian, I'm just wondering what the cost is on it.
The only cost that's being provided, the cost is being covered by the company that's putting it on.
Oh.
The only cost to us would be the gasoline.
Radio?
That's true of all three of these, isn't it?
Let's see, the second one is provided by the state, but we do have to pay for the accommodations. That comes out of our HAZMAT budget, though. And the next one, same thing. And the last one, that's paid for by the state fire, so. In answer to your question, yes. Different sources, but.
Okay, any other questions on the first one? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, number two, Brian?
Number two, for myself and HAZMAT Coordinator Schrammel to attend the Hazardous Materials Leadership Forum. That's an annual event that the State Hazardous Materials Group puts on.
All right, do we have a motion? By Supervisor Gerard, second. Supervisor Brock? Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, on to number three.
Number three, travel request to attend the Regional Fire Administrators Conference. This is an annual conference at the Fire Academy where the State Office of Fire Prevention and Control updates all the fire coordinators on what's going on.
All right, do we have a motion? Supervisor Simpson, do we have a second? Supervisor Frazier, any discussion or questions? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? And that carries.
Under old business pending items, the scenario with the carport for my equipment, discussing that with Chairman Garrity, that discussion will be on hold until some more information on the court scenario is determined. So
Okay.
you can take that right off if you'd like. We can remove that as a pending item until we get further information.
All right, we'll do that. Under topics for discussion?
The training center is running well. I think things are going well there, and we're looking at how we can utilize those new containers that we received, and so we're good there. Comlex training, that was where I was last week. That's a federal training course on communications during disasters. And the Facebook and Twitter discussion, Amy will deal with that.
Back in 2011, when we had 4 states of emergencies throughout the entire county, we realized the importance of having social media, so we developed a Facebook account. We've used it for various things subsequent to that time, like when we closed the county center. We use that to let the public know as well as our employees know that we're closing it. When we set it up originally, it was only accessible on my terminal and on Brian's terminal. Brian's really not up on Facebook for some strange reason, so that's great with me. So I do 90% of the posting and stuff for Facebook and for Twitter, but we realized when we're really busy, I can't do everything. And we have some qualified people in our staff who can post appropriate things on Facebook. So what we're asking here, we've already gone through IT, and Mike Calvin said it was okay if we allow accessibility on the rest of the terminals. So now we're asking you guys, as our committee, if it's okay with you guys if we put it on the rest of our terminals. This is not for personal use. We have, OES itself has a social media policy in place. So we're not allowing people to just go around and find out what's for dinner tonight on Facebook. This is strictly professional, what we're doing.
All right. Supervisor Sieber.
I have a couple of questions. One, I think it's great you have a social media policy. I know I've benefited from your posts on Facebook with closings or emergency updates. I think it's an excellent tool to get out to the community. But Do we, as a county, Paul, have a county-wide social media policy?
We do not, and that is one of the directions here again that we want to head into, as part of our web updating and everything else that's happening that as a result of obviously flowing from this room, the new technology we're using here. I think it is time that the county actually have a Facebook page. And, in fact, I'm looking at whether or not, that Facebook page should be tied to the other departments or whether they can have standalone pages, but we'll need to have a written county policy certainly concerning all of this. Certainly the time has come. And, not only Facebook, but I think that the, use of Twitter has certainly, advantages in this day and age. Especially when many people, that's how they receive their news quickly, particularly during snowstorms or when roads are closed or there's other emergencies or situations that affect people, to be able to receive that instantaneously through Twitter or other media, social media, I think is very important. So we are going to be moving in that direction. I actually, when I was at NISAC, I took a seminar on it and was very impressed by the materials I had received there, and so that is on the agenda.
I think I'm glad we can follow your lead then at OES, because I think that's so important to have that social media policy. So are you coming to this committee because it's blocked on your terminals right now?
Right now, out of the 5 terminals in our office, only 2 of them have access to it, which means that if Brian and I are working on something else and we need a message out and I want Jen to post it, usually she'll come to my computer and post it, but if I'm already on my computer, she can't post it from hers. So this will allow her to do it from her computer. So what we're asking is for all 5 terminals to have access to it.
Supervisor Gerard?
But ultimately, you have the responsibility for the postings.
Correct.
Supervisor Taylor, did you have a question?
Dan asked my question.
Okay.
Yeah, we don't post anything without it's run by myself and Amy or whichever one of us is in the office. Whoever else is there that could be using these terminals is not allowed to do that without permission from one of us. We're not just posting things willy-nilly.
All right, so why don't we do it by resolution then and authorize the other terminals? Do we have a motion? Supervisor Gerard, seconded by Supervisor Frazier. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, anything else, Brian?
That's it for me, thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Move on to the sheriff now.
Is this where we're sitting down here now?
Either end is fine with me, Sheriff.
Okay.
What's your best side?
No, I don't have a best side.
Try to like it up here better.
I don't think I brought it down with me this morning. Thank you.
You want the mic?
Thank you.
So you don't care where I sit?
Nope, whichever seat is...
That's the next to you, Dan?
This is the safest place I
Good morning.
Good morning.
Nice.
I understand you and Captain Kidd have something in common?
Who? Captain Kidd?
Yeah, gold bars.
Gold, oh, yeah. No, we don't have the gold bars anymore. We have Captain.
Wow, you did. I know.
I know, you were making a joke.
Thank you.
I'm just going to set these over here just so I don't forget, because I will.
Good morning.
Morning.
Sheriff. Okay. We're all set whenever, and just so you know, Sheriff, we'll have to do for these 2 other requests to fills that you had, we do need committee approval for those.
Yeah, I'll put
Okay.
that in there. That's what I was
Excellent.
gonna ask.
Thanks.
The first one is, want to send a couple of our officers to an emotional trauma survival training in law enforcement at Ithaca College. We're going to start out sending 2. It's done by a PhD in stress counseling. So we feel it's a start for a good training for these folks. And it's all, the only thing I think, Sean, we have to pay is the room, is that correct? Everything else is paid for. So I'm requesting for permission for those 2 to go.
All right, we have a motion. Supervisor Simpson, seconded by Supervisor Gerard.
Question.
Yeah?
Yes.
The emotional trauma pertaining to victims, bringing to the officers
No,
themselves?
stress itself for the police officers themselves. Yep.
Any other questions? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay.
Request a resol for intermunicipal agreement with Washington County Emergency Response Team. The county attorney's office has drawn that up. Martin's office worked on that, so we need a resolution for that.
All right, do we have a motion to get it on the floor? Supervisor Taylor, seconded by Supervisor Gerard. Any questions? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, and then,
Now, I'm not sure, because we didn't, this is new how we're doing it, but we requested to fill 2 vacancies. One of our sergeants, Tony Breen, is retiring. So we're gonna have to slide somebody into his slot and fill a patrol officer's position. And I believe we got the
Police
signatures.
information. Yes, we have all the signatures that are necessary.
We just need to send it through
Yep.
committee.
Supervisor Gerard made a motion. Do we have a second? Supervisor Simpson, any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay, that carries.
At this point in time, I think you all recall some time back, we requested a permission to get a company to come in to analyze our radio system. Everybody's been agreeing that we've had some radio problems, so Televate has been doing that. They've been here for what, 3 months now, Sean?
They were here for
Good part of the summer, and before they present it to the full board, they want to at least present to this committee, so, they're going to do a PowerPoint for us now, it'll take about 15 minutes. Sean, Larry, you want to take it over, or is there anything else you want to explain?
I'll ask you if you needed that.
Welcome to the conference center. Please enter your moderator code or your participant code, followed by the pound sign.
I believe they're going to be presenting it to the full board next month, is that correct, Sean?
That's correct, sir.
This is Warren County. Hello, can you hear us?
Yeah, we hear you well. Can you hear us?
Yep.
This is Rick Burke.
Who is, you got Sheriff York here with our committee. Are you prepared to start?
Yeah. Have you been able to log into the WebEx so we can go through the slides together?
Yes.
If you're able to do that.
Yeah, and who am I talking with?
This is Rick Burke.
You're one of the gentlemen that's been up here this summer, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Amna Solomon is here with me.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning. You want to turn that up? But we're going to hold on. We're going to turn it up a little.
Who is this, sir? Who am I talking to?
Sheriff York.
Sheriff, how are you, sir?
Good. Okay. Can everybody hear that? All right, Rick. You guys are ready to roll.
We're ready.
Go.
Okay. Are you ready for us?
Yeah, we're ready.
All right, so before we get started, and I really appreciate, again, the extending Televate the opportunity to support you on this project, and for you making your time available today. How much time do we have so we can time, we can be sure that we meet your requirement on time?
15 minutes, 20 tops. How about that?
Okay, well, we better talk fast. All right.
Well, that's good. Talk fast. Get to it.
All right, here's the agenda. We're going to go from the approach through the next steps and everything in between. So I'm not going to belabor this. We're just going to move forward. All right. So here's the overview of the approach. The project that you asked us to do required information gathering, evaluate your systems, and then to provide recommendations. And basically, in supporting that effort, we gathered information. We gathered information on the data. The project team provided us everything we needed and more. We interviewed a number of folks. We actually captured field measurements to quantify, and to validate what we had engineered and what you folks were saying about your network. And basically, then we did an independent validation of the network. We basically engineered it. So we did propagation studies, and we did a series of typical analyses to quantify and to validate what was being said and what we had documented. We looked, we documented strengths and weaknesses of the network, and basically once we completed that process, we pulled together recommendations that we're going to discuss with you today on looking at near, midterm, and long-term solutions for you to improve the coverage and performance of your public safety land mobile radio network. In terms of an overview of your radio network, here it is. You've got an extensive network. You've got 750 two-way portable and mobile radios. There are 1,000 pagers assigned primarily to volunteer firefighters throughout the county. And then here's a list of all of the users there, from the sheriff through the Glen Falls PD and everybody in between. In terms of the configuration of your radio network, and this certainly means more to the operating and the technical staff than it does to the users, but you've got a 6-channel VHF analog simulcast that supports your voice and paging. And simulcast is really the right architecture for your county's performance. And what we're going to talk about is how we tweak the performance of that network to make improvements. That simulcast, while being a benefit to you, is also, it can be, if not managed and designed properly, it can create some problems, and we'll discuss what we discovered about that. The system has been in place since 2004, 4 sites on the transmit. There's 5 sites for receive, so there's 1 voting receive site as well. The importance that it was implemented in 2004, being 10 years old, is noteworthy, because while your network isn't yet at the end of its life cycle, by the time we would implement some of the changes we're going to recommend, it's going to be near its end of life cycle. So it's delicate of some of the changes we're going to talk about, recommendations going to make to the network. We also need to keep in our mind that your existing network is also aging, is going to reach the end of its life cycle maybe before we get through some of the upgrades that we're going to recommend. You've made periodic improvements, so the network has improved along the way. And in 2012, as you all know, when you narrow banded your network, as the FCC requirement to narrow band, you have basically created some additional challenges with your network coverage, and we're going to show you some of those maps shortly. In terms of the simulcast network, the PROS provides continuous stalk-out coverage, basically from one end of the county to the other end of the county. Your officers, your firefighters could talk to one another, and certainly that's one of the benefits of those of you who have been using radio networks a long time. You've seen a time and an evolution when you had to know exactly what tower you are and where you were, and your communication path was steered to that channel. In a simulcast environment, the network doesn't care where you are. It assigns you a channel and would assign others a common channel so that you could talk about it. So it's also efficient use of scarce radio spectrum resources. On the con side, if we don't design these simulcast systems properly, in order to manage the interference, since all the sites are using the same channel, we have to time the launch of the signal from different sites in a slightly different timing, or they can create interference. And some of what we'll show you is that your network is interfering with itself, and we're going to make some recommendations on what actions that we should do. And I will say that Televate worked very closely with with Mark Neal, Larry Jeffers, and Brian LaFleur, and really going through, you know, assessing your network. So it's kind of a team approach towards this. But, you know, what we have to make, in order for these simulcast networks to do what they're designed to do, they have to be properly tuned. And so we'll talk about that as well. On the right-hand side, you'll see where your sites are located. And so, you know, we've gotten to appreciate, you know, having driven over 350 miles or so in the county, we got to know the county pretty well, and what a great place you all have. So, but your geography is certainly one of the issues that affects coverage. You know, those great mountains and valleys you have, and the lake, are not real kind to radio signal propagation. So, you know, you'll need more sites, really. We've got 4 transmit and 1 receive and an additional receive site. But you're going to, in order to expand the coverage, you're going to need more sites. So, in terms of the survey, we did a survey of these folks here and some others in the hallway. So we learned a lot about the network's performance from the sheriff's patrol. We learned about, you know, how the repeaters are working, the vehicular repeaters for when they leave their car, and you know, from firefighter, anyone who represents the firefighter community, we certainly learned that the paging network isn't always reliable, and a variety of ongoing activities in the region. So we considered all of that in putting it together. So in terms of additional findings, certainly everyone relies on the radio for their daily activities, safety and emergency notification. I mean, it is a lifeline. And therefore, as the primary lifeline of communication, it's got to be reliable, and it's got to be resilient. And, you know, the reliability of the network in terms of being available to you when you need it has been outstanding. Where your flaws are is you don't have coverage everywhere you need it. And so, you know, reliability of what you have has been good. Can we go back to just a second? That's all right. So many of you told us that you've received, you know, there's been degradation since narrow banding. And while that is the case, I mean, you have experienced degradation, you also, because of the way your network is architected and because there are insufficient number of radio sites, narrow banding just accentuated a problem that has been there for a long time. And so this is a good opportunity. Narrow banding certainly, I use the analogy, narrow banding reduced a 100-watt light bulb to 25 watts. And so when you reduce, you know, if you turn the light down to 25 watts, it doesn't shine as far. And basically that's what you did when you narrow banded. So anything that was on the edge of bad performance became even worse. But your biggest barrier, not just narrow banding, are your mountains. Your terrain is a big, you know, impediment to your signal coverage. All right. So, in terms of your coverage challenges, 4 radio sites are insufficient to provide reliable service over your 1,000 square mile coverage area. Mountains, terrain, limit propagation. Your system is designed for high-power mobile radio units. And we, you know, radio, I mean, while we need mobile units, our community in general is moving towards a portable environment. So portables become a commonplace. You leave your vehicle on the road, you still need to be able to communicate, so you have to have portable coverage. If you're going into buildings, you certainly can't drive your car in. So, you know, you're at a transition stage. You've got to make improvements in your radio network to provide and accommodate some higher percentage of portable coverage, and that's what your folks were telling us as well. Some of the areas that now have poor audio are not because you don't have enough signal there, it's actually because you have too much signal coming from sites that are competing for coverage. The receiver on the unit is having a difficult time discriminating between what site it should really talk to. And while simulcast will give an improvement in that, when it's not properly tuned and timed, it will create a degradation of the signal, and we drove test that, and we tested that over a day or more when we were there, and we experienced that degradation, and we also mapped it. We'll show you some of that. You also have, in some of your previous design, you have tower sites where you have an individual antenna associated with each channel. Now that's kind of an old school design, and that really protects any given talk, every channel. In the event that I lose that antenna, for some reason I've got an issue with that particular antenna, take a lightning hit, or I've got failure in the transmission line, all the other channels will survive. However, you've got over 140 feet separation on some of your towers. So some channels are on the lower end of the tower, and they're not covering near as much area that the ones on the higher level are. So we're recommending combining, 6 antennas into probably 2. And that'll still give you some reliability, but that'll also raise coverage on some sites. So that range is really an important way to improve your coverage area, and that would reduce the number of sites we need. Also, in the park, in the state park, you've got some regulations. The Adirondack Park and the Department of Environmental Conservation. You have issues there putting towers in. So, and within the park, while coverage would be nice to provide it there, it's going to be difficult to work with with these folks managing it. But ultimately, the park is really rigorous in terms of geography, and you would need a number of sites. Now, we haven't proposed them, but if that's something that has to be done, then we're going to have to add more sites to it. All right, so let's look at coverage simulation. So we're going to show you, when we modeled the system based on the technical parameters, the height of antennas, the type of antenna, the output power, and so forth, we really engineer it. So we do a propagation study. And this is the talk out from the base station to the mobile or portable and for paging. So this is the footprint that you currently have right now for the network. We base this on a digital audio quality assessment of 3.4, which is standard in the industry. That says that it's subjective. It says I can hear this well, and I don't really need to repeat myself. But this is what you've got today on the talk out. However, we have to design for what we talk back. So the talk in, and you can see here that we go back to the other side. So here in the green represents indoor, dark green, outdoor, and then mobile. So you're talking out, the base station talks out a long way, but however, we really engineer from what we're able to talk back. The portable and the mobiles are low to the ground. They're surrounded by clutter. They're also at much lower power. So we engineer based on that. And so here you can see that your network on the mobile coverage side is much, much greater than what you're able to talk back to on your portables, both outdoor and in buildings. And if you will note, around the site, you always have a greater coverage closer to the site. As Mark says, you got to have the radio, what's it, Mark's expression about being close to the ears?
Right.
Yeah, so, and it's right. I mean, you want to increase your portable coverage. We need more sites, or, as you've already done, you need vehicular repeaters. And so, let's keep going on now. All right, so this actually demonstrates, this map here, as colorful as it is, actually indicates that you've got a lot of coverage overlap in Glen Falls and in other parts of your geography. But where you have plenty of coverage, radio in Glen Falls, you also have a lot of poor quality use because there's as I mentioned earlier, simulcast network, the frequencies from multiple sites are there, and they're competing for, the receivers, they're competing for access to the receiver. And in this case here, that overlap is actually detrimental in the simulcast environment. All right, so the recommendations. Are we good so far? Any questions? Trying to keep on pace.
Anybody got any questions?
Yeah,
I got a question for you, Rick.
Hi,
Yes, sir.
my name is Bud Taylor. You're speaking to, in addition to the sheriff, a subcommittee or a committee of 7 people.
Yes, sir.
One of the
Vice
things that
Chairman.
you said when you started, your conversation was that our system would probably be obsolete before the upgrade was completed. And I guess you're way over my head here, but what does that mean in terms of dollars and compatibility with whatever improvements we make here in our systems?
So, sir, you asked a really good question. It's one we struggle with all the time, and we have the dollars associated with all the recommendations that we're going to make. We, part of the scope of this project was to provide the recommendations, provide you with a budget of those. So, but to talk to you directly about this, when you have a network that's 10 years old and we're going to add new facilities to it, we have to then look at, in 10 years, technology has changed in the radio industry. So we have new technologies available to us. So we should be able to add new equipment to the old equipment and make it work, but we'd have to still look at it carefully. But we also are cautioning you and put in money in your budget to make upgrades to replace some of your older equipment, because we go through this assessment and say, okay, let's just say it's a $6 million program. Well, it's a $5 million program, but that doesn't address any of your aging equipment. And so if we go forward and say, okay, we need $5 million, but the $5 million doesn't cover the replacement of your aging equipment, then we think we've made a mistake in that. We really need to we need to let you understand all of the risks, and we budgeted for them. Does that make sense, sir?
Yes.
Okay, any other questions? All right, so when we looked at it, basically what we're looking at is that we feel, and so does your project team, we can and have been making some near-term improvements. When we look at the recommendations that we're going to talk about, we're looking at near-term, and mid-term, and long-term. And basically the way we've done the budgeting for that and the listing of the activities that could be undertaking was, what can we do near term with fewer dollars, and what do you need longer term with more dollars? Because if we put in new towers, we're not going to get that done in a few months. That's going to take a couple of years or more. So we propose near term, mid term, and long term enhancements, and so that's how we've done it. And so you look at, when we look at the pre-modification activities, some of the things our recommendation says, let's do some, let's immediately address this timing of the launch on the simulcast channels. We know that by improving the timing, and there's already a couple of the Synchrocast implementation that's already in motion, but affecting the launch delays is going to. By doing that immediately, we're going to make improvements down in the Glen Falls area. We're going to remove some of the signal away from that area, and that's going to give you improvements there. And so this is as Alma's flashing through. You could see that the simulcast changing. We also feel we need to change some antenna system configurations, similar to those I mentioned earlier, the high and the low antennas, but also some antennas need to be pointed away from Glen Falls at the Prospect site. Yeah, so the Prospect site antennas are pointed directly towards Glen Falls, but you have a site that's covering Glen Falls. So we're recommending a few changes like that right now. So those things could be done sooner than later, and that's what we say near term. There's for these activities, it's a few $100,000 of expense, so we'll get into that area. So this idea of changing antennas on this pre-modification, you can see there, this is in the talk-in, right? This is talk-in, Alma? Yes. All right, so pre-modification, post-modification, go through that one more time. So again, what you're looking for is wherever it's white is no coverage. Wherever you see red, you've got portable coverage, and wherever you see green, you have in-building the dark and in-vehicle the light green. So, all right. So the other recommendation here is enhancing your vehicular repeater system, although we don't have that on this slide, right? That's on the next one. All right. Okay, so here, another change that we feel you should do near term is to replace your VRS systems. As we talked to Mark and team, a number of years ago, I don't know how many, but 8 to 10 years, you bought VRS, you put them in, you didn't like them. So you took them out, but when you put them back in, you got some improvements. However, they're not really doing the job that the later generation could do. You've got an aged vehicular repeater system. So the vehicular repeater systems can be designed so that activation of a door or push of a button, when an officer leaves their vehicle, they leave the car and we maintain a communication back to the dispatcher. Right now, you've got some folks are using them, some aren't. There's not a repeater in every sheriff's vehicle. And so, those need to be enhanced. We really feel instead of trying to fix what you have, you really should buy a current generation. The newer ones out there are better than what you have. And again, those are also going through a life cycle. They're at the end of their life cycle as well. So near term, let me go back over near term because we've jumped around here. The synchronizing the timing on the simulcast needs to be done. Some antenna changes in type and location on the tower need to be made, and vehicular repeaters need to be put in into the vehicles. Now, another change that we recommend is that we could also put in some repeaters at volunteer fire stations. So basically, when the page is going out, a page request, an alert is being made to volunteer firefighters and others. Basically, that coverage is not as great and it doesn't cover everything it needs to. So in the long term, more sites will improve that. But in the near term, we really recommend that we should put some repeaters up there. It's something that Mark had already, brought up, and he was thinking about it, and we agree that's, maybe not at every fire station, but a select few. These repeaters aren't that expensive, but it would be a wise early investment. Okay. So let's go to mid to long term. So we're recommending at a minimum of 4 new sites, basically, and maybe some changes to the location of other sites. And we've looked at Stony Creek, and we haven't found any towers. We haven't really done anything to address Stony Creek. We felt, and it was also a recommendation, we should focus our attention on where the population is. Our design doesn't fix anything in Stony Creek. And so, if that's something that needs to be put back on the table, we're going to have to, you're going to have to look at at a minimum, a couple of more radio towers over there. And maybe there's some that we could use that state conservation is using or others, and maybe you could partner with them. But right now, we're not addressing them. So can we go back to, all right, so where we're at?
This is current, and this is the district enforcement.
All right, so let's go back to current. All right, so again, current, there it is. And with 4 new sites, you can see you're increasing coverage in a lot of areas that are not, are not receiving coverage today. Lake Luzerne, for example, it's rare that you could get a coverage down there. You'd be lucky on the right day. If you got a good temperature inversion, you might get some coverage down there. Or if you park your mobile into a local location. Chesterfield, Chestertown, also, coverage is not reliable there. Bolton, coverage is not reliable there day to day. The firefighters have their own tower there, so when they go and serve something, they actually have 2 facilities there in talking to those folks. So in order to make improvements in areas that don't have signal, the only thing we can do is actually to bring more radio-based stations. While I'll give you folks a lot of credit for how quickly you implement the Hague facility, it really is in a good location at the volunteer fire site, but it actually is blocked by a ridge, so it doesn't really cover as much as if it was on the mountain. And you know, we recommended, you know, considering moving that site. The Warrensburg Tower is also in a low area. Mark put a receiver out there, so you've got receiver there, which improves the talkback. But we may, you know, we're going to make that a full-blown site. We may want to move it onto a hill so that, you know, we've got greater visibility of the area it's serving. So, we'll just go back here one more second. So anyway, these sites listed to the right, Black Mountain, we really like Black Mountain, but it's not an easy site to get to. I think it's been offered to the county. It's owned by State Patrol, I think, manages that site, and it's really it's outside of the county, but it's really a very commanding site. It's only accessible by helicopter, and it would be an expensive one, more expensive than others to deploy. But we haven't really captured any new tower costs. These are for using existing towers. And so there are towers out there. We've done a preliminary search. We feel we can find towers, existing towers, but there will be some leasing charges for them, or maybe there's some trade-off of your towers to the state. But this is the improvements you're going to get with these towers there, as well as repeater systems and vehicle repeaters and others. So any questions so far? All right. Other enhancements for the paging, I mentioned this. You know, there are a number of things we could do in addition to pagers. We could consider implementing using your cellular device. There are ways that you know, but the cellular coverage isn't all that great either. So, I mean, if the cellular carriers are covering an area that we're not, we can easily get coverage there. If they haven't made an investment to cover an area, you know, then we may have to make a larger investment to get coverage there. But there are some options, and we want to make sure that we're using them all. I mentioned the paging repeaters at select fire facilities. You know, we can use some directional antennas to put the coverage where we need it. Here's the idea of the serviceable lifespan of a radio system, 12 to 15 years. And, you know, if it takes us 3 to 5 to get this in, your existing investment is going to be near the end of its life cycle. Some of your equipment may already be there. You know, maybe power supplies, generators. Dispatch consoles, yeah. So, you can speak up, please.
Dispatch consoles. I don't want to interrupt.
Yeah, Ahmed and I are a team on this, so he's done the heavy lifting. Schools, everywhere we go, you know, we find that the schools, we build our schools, you know, the last, 100 years or more, and they're really built at a level that makes it difficult for RF to get into it, radio, you know, to get our radio coverage in there. And, you know, you may really want to consider, you know, putting in some distributed antennas into schools. We didn't budget for that though, did we? You know, we didn't budget for those. So, but it's very difficult unless the school is near the tower to get a radio in there. And, you know, we don't want to put our children at risk, but everywhere we're working around the country, this is something being more closely looked at. But you're not alone there. And the other thing you can look at is, you know, these antenna systems, distributed antenna systems, it may be wise to put them in malls and other tourist attractions, wherever you feel you need coverage and you don't have it. We don't necessarily have to build a radio tower to give you this coverage, but even after building the radio towers, we won't get coverage everywhere. So identifying your critical buildings that you need coverage is probably a prudent effort to go through, and then we can determine what to do. A number of folks, through the changing in the fire regulation laws, have also enacted ordinances wherever I've got a large new building being constructed, that they also include this repeater in there. Maybe something for consideration. All right, Amna. All right, so here's basically the list of you know, in bucketing, trying to bucket these costs, these investments of what we've looked at. And we have provided and we'll also refine the detail behind this. Have we not provided, you know, already? So yeah. So in order to generate these numbers, we do a line item budget of each and every component, as well as the services typically required to implement these. So these are longer term short and long term investments to enhance the network, to make it more reliable for the future, and so to insulate it against any unforeseen changes or network failures. All right, so we did one other assessment. We actually examined the going to a Project 25, a digital channel. Going digital basically can improve coverage by another 3 to 6 dB. Again, going back to that 100-watt light bulb, 3 dB takes it to 50 watts, and 3 more dB takes it to 25. But on the positive side, if I increase it 3 dB, it'll go to 200 watts. If I increase it, 6 dB, it'll go to 400 watts. Digital, has its pros and cons, and it has extra costs associated, but we did assess it as part of this analysis. There are improvements that could be made from it, but there's also a much higher cost to it, 35% higher cost to go digital, and so we didn't necessarily recommend it, but we did map it, so you do have that mapped right here, don't you? Later. Oh, yeah, wait, later, okay. All right, so in terms of the recap, the cost estimate recap,
we can just go to this table.
Here you go. All right, so why don't you talk about this table, Alma?
Sure, so I think this table basically addresses all of the costs that we've seen in the previous slides, which address both the near-term and the long-term estimates for everything, essentially. I mean, I think the first half of the table, for instance, the first 2 rows really talk about the mid to near term that we talked about, which are improving the antenna systems, optimizing simulcast timing, as well as deploying the vehicular system. So that's the 367 and the 297, and everything else is a mix of increasing coverage as well as doing the life cycle replacements that Rick discussed. So while we're updating, so there's the near-term component, and then for the long-term, while we're actually looking at expanding coverage, we also have to think about replacing some of the things that may be facing life cycle challenges now. So the whole system, our estimate is $6 million in the next 2 to 5 years to be able to get a level of service from the system that we really gathered from the subscribers and the users themselves. It's also important to note that as you're making these capital investments, that operational budget has to also be considered, and we think that it's fair and commensurate with the industry to dedicate about 10% of the equipment costs annually for that as well, and that amounts to about $350 to $400K. And I think we have some details to the next slide, but this essentially concludes the presentation, but we have additional details on these costs.
So once we make enhancements to the capital improvements to the network, your operating costs are going to increase along with that. You're going to have additional sites. You're going to need some additional technical help. You've got software maintenance. You've got ongoing maintenance. We want to be sure that you accommodate your sustainability for the future. So we always look at a capital and operational budget within the same analysis, because you don't want to say, well, make these improvements and then not address how I'm going to maintain them for the future. All right, so next slide.
Just more detail on that, really.
Yeah, so this slide really gives the detail. It breaks it down a little bit more. What are these activities, and what do they encompass? More of a line item budget. All right, so any questions before we talk about what we think the next steps are? Why don't you go back to that previous slide there?
I just have one.
We got a question, Rick.
Okay.
I can't speak to the knowledge of digital, but it appears that, everything is going digital. This investment that we would be making, would that come back to bite us in respect to that we should have done digital because that's the wave of the future? Can you speak to that? Is that a fair assessment, or how do you look at that?
All right, so that's a really good question, and so we've had this conversation amongst our own team and with the county's team. The good news is that newer generation equipment can be firmware upgraded, can be upgraded to be digital, including radios. I mean, you could buy radios that are digital capable. So we can either make the investment now and get the benefits from it, and we do have a map on it, or we could, you know, we could defer it. It depends, you know, it depends on the availability of the funding, really, in my opinion. So, I would say we should go digital, but, you know, that's just, you know, I'm not footing the bill for this, but basically there are benefits in going digital. But there, again, it does change the communication. We've heard a number of first responders say that, you know, they don't like the digital. I mean, when I fall off the cliff in digital, you can't hear me at all. In analog, I might be able to keep moving, and you know, you hear the scratchy conversation, the picket fencing we call it, but you know, basically, there are pros and cons.
Yeah, it's more that we wouldn't be wasting our money in that, in 10 years, we wish that we went digital and spent millions of dollars. I guess that's, if you could speak more to that point.
If we don't have an issue with the funding, it might be a wiser approach to take now. If we have, I mean, we're asking, you know, right now for $6 million. If we ask for, what was it, 7.5 or 8? We had a
35% more, so yes, it's about 7.8.
Yeah. So, you know, if we ask for that now, I mean, it's a decision you know, it's on the table there. I mean, this is with your committee, and what we present, you know, to the commissioners is exactly the right time to have this conversation. We did this study based on both ends, and we had cost estimates for going digital as well. And I think this is something your committee should discuss further. I believe, you know, your committee is in the right position to make, you know, to assess this further and decide on what to do prior to getting to, you know, us making the presentation to the commissioners, which is I think the 16th, 17th of the month. So, but it is a worthy question to explore. I'd certainly like to hear from you know, others on the team what they think about, you know, making that investment or proposing that investment.
Well, and Rick, we have copies of this, so we could get it to each one of the committee members here. We could supply this. Yeah, we can get that to each one of you committee members to look at.
Just a comment from the grant side and the State Interoperability Board, which I participate with. Any grant that we get for any kind of communications equipment, according to the grant, you have to buy equipment that is P25 capable. Doesn't mean you have to institute it. Right now, the radios that we've been putting in the sheriff's cars for the last 2 years are P25 capable. There is an upgrade to that radio. So you don't have to buy the hardware. You may have to change the software. But every radio we buy right now that we get with grant money and without grant money is already P25 capable. So to your point, Dan, we need to make sure that if we decide to make changes now in any of our equipment, that we keep in mind that we need to make that equipment capable for digital use in the future should we need it. So, I mean,
you don't see any wasting of where we're headed, you know, so that we wish that we went digital now and we're spending millions in 10 years because we made the wrong. I guess that's more to my point. What do you see as far as moving forward?
Well, without getting into everything, from what I see statewide, there are several very distinct issues between building up what we have now and going digital. Going digital would require us to replace every single radio in the county. The county does not own all those radios. We own a very small percentage of those radios compared to the fire and EMS guys. So if you go to them and say, well, you know, you guys just replaced all your radios for narrowbanding, and now we want you to replace all your radios completely to go digital, we don't own that stuff, they do. Do we want to buy all the radios, as this quote indicates, and then we own all the radios, and then we're right back into this scenario we were 5 years ago when we got rid of our low band channel because it was costing us a fortune and nobody knew who was responsible for what. So I don't want to get into that whole thing now, but I believe where these guys are headed is great. They've done a great job. Mark has given them a substantial amount of suggestion. There are some things out there that are occurring right now, fiber optic cable that has been offered to us at no charge to get to some of these sites that we're talking about. It seems every couple of days somebody comes across and says, hey, you know, I got a site that would work just great for that. And as the team explores those, I think, we can come back with some better information, or more solid, but, there is another grant coming out next month, another round of grants for this type of equipment. And if we have this information, which we do now, I would like to see us try to apply to get at least some of this upgrade equipment.
So, is that Brian was, talking?
Yes, sir.
Hey, okay, thank you, Brian. So, again, this is a, this analog or digital is a really important, conversation. Well, everything Brian says is right. I mean, we have to buy compatible, but the cost of upgrading, you know, later, is that kind of will be even more money, because you got to touch the radios again. But can you go to the last slide? So we did, you know, we didn't model it just for the sake of showing it, this migration. So, you know, this really, if we went digital based on, again, improvements of 6 dB, and we may not get a full 6 dB, but this shows you with all the sites that we propose that, you know, the network performance, you know, does get better. I mean, it does result in improvements based on what we've modeled. And so the investment, if you look at the investment you make for the additional square mileage of coverage you get, I mean, we could put a model together that says, you know, based on making this additional, you know, $1.5 million improvement, I can obtain, you know, this much additional enhancement to my network. You could quantify that if we needed to, but this was really, you know, something we put together because we understand that that this, should I go analog or digital, you know, is really, for some, it becomes the underlying question, and we've seen these debates, for, you know, for a long time now. Folks will debate it. So anyway, I think if you go back just to that slide here, next steps. All right. So I think, you know, the next steps are you know, pretty clear based on what we said. You know, you've really got to we've got to find the budget. You know, we're debating a long-term budget for $6 to $7.5 million. Fine, but we need to find a budget for, you know, $500,000 to $750,000 to make the near-term changes now. Those improvements, you're going to see some, you know, some noticeable improvements by making that initial investment. The longer-term improvements are clearly, we've mapped them, and you can see those enhancements. But you know, if it's easier for the legislature to get up $1 million than it is to get for 6 or 7 and 7 to 8, fine. But you know, we need to start. You know, we need to start this now. And you know, if you could find if we could find a few $100,000, we should start on the initial activities that we've recommended. So with that said,
Rick, I think the issue that this committee has to get figured out first, and they're going to have to sit down with Mark Neal, Larry Jeffords, Sean, and Brian. They're going to have to get over the hurdle of digital or analog. I think that is the big question, and I think they have to get all sides of the pros and cons of both before we go any further with that. Would you agree?
Yes, sir, I would agree for mid to longer term, but near term, the investments we're talking about on the near term for the simulcast timing advancements, the antenna changes, VRS. I mean, we can get a VRS that you know, we could upgrade. I would really, you don't need to have that debate to make decision on those near term improvements. They won't be affected by the digital or analog decision. They really will, they need to happen, you know, near term, while you're debating this.
Okay. Thank you.
And we'll be happy to facilitate and participate in those conversations with those folks about it and share some knowledge, experiences, and some industry literature.
Thank you.
Sheriff, I'd just like to make one comment that digital and analog, we all have our opinions on that. One important thing to remember, not all of our channels would go digital. The paging channel, which is one of the most difficult items that people are complaining about, the firefighters and EMS people being able to have their pager activate, the pagers are not digital. They will always be analog. So where Rick says we need to start, you know, fixing up what we have now, that is important. That is never going to change. We're always going to need that.
Yeah, it's a good point. Sorry, I didn't bring that out.
Are you guys done now, Rick? Do any committee have any questions for these folks? Well, there's
Yeah, we're done.
I think we're set.
Yes, we're finished our presentation, outside of any other questions.
Okay, well, I'll make sure I get a copy of that slide to each of the committee members here. We do have it, right, Sean, on the email system?
Yeah, we get it.
Thank you, Rick.
We'll send an updated version. There might have been some minor modifications, so we'll send an updated version.
Yeah,
Thank
if
you,
you could,
sir.
if you could
Thank
do
you,
that
everyone.
ASAP, that'd be great.
Is there just one question?
Yes.
With respect to presenting to the board as a whole on October 17th, are there any recommendations on how you think this, should be improved or shortened, or you're okay with the way it was delivered now?
Chairman? For your full board, any?
Cut it down a couple of minutes.
I don't know if you heard the chairman, but he said, well, if you could cut it down a couple minutes.
Yeah, we'll cut it down.
We'll cut it down, yeah. It's hard to, relay the story in a very succinct way, but we'll definitely cut it
Yeah,
down.
we'll cut it down. We can get to right to the meat,
All right,
of it.
hey, Rick, the chairman said, they're gonna look at the presentation you have here, and
Yes.
they'll pick out the ones that they think the board will need the most, so those are the ones you'll key on, okay?
Okay, that's a 10 a.m. meeting, is that correct, on the Friday, the 17th?
Yes, sir.
Would you wanna, I haven't made my flight plans, I wanna make them today. I could come in a little earlier the day before, or I'd come in a little later, we could meet, we could have a beer summit, or we could get together in the morning before the meeting. However you all, wanna do, we can certainly talk between now and then too.
You didn't tell us you had television.
Yeah, whatever's convenient for you. Yes.
Right.
But it's, what's the date, Chairman, of your next meeting, Friday, what is it?
17th.
Friday the 17th of, October, correct.
That's right. And where's that meeting gonna be held?
Right at the boardroom here at the Municipal Center.
All right, thank you. All right, we're good on our end. We'll wait for your feedback and be happy to have, that appropriate analog to digital conversation if, as needed.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
All right. Anything further for the sheriff today?
I think that there's a lot of people now that are watching, well, not a lot probably, but people are gonna see this on YouTube, and they're gonna see the meetings on Channel 8 and so on. I think there's obviously gonna be people that are gonna say, hey, $6 million, you guys gotta be kidding me. What are we doing now? If it's working now, why do we need it? And I think we gotta talk to the situation of why it's important that we do this.
And I think that you just include, don't get it from the sheriff, include the people that are the stakeholders here, the EMS people, the fire people. They're the ones that have, the town supervisors get all the complaints from their fire and EMS, and we get the complaints from our patrol officers, but we also get the complaints from fire and EMS. So I think you gotta bring in all the stakeholders and let them speak to that problem. Does that sound accurate, guys?
I think so. Supervisor Seaver?
I guess I'm a little curious how the funding for all this works. Clearly, it's a large price tag, and I'm assuming Brian's gonna tell us all about the grants that are available, although I'm making the assumption that it's not gonna cover the full $6, $7, $8 million. These users that you talk about and that were highlighted in the slide, from the police department to your patrol officers, EMS and fire, how does that work? Like, what's the contribution that they make towards it, or is there no contribution and it's covered by Warren County? I mean, this is simple, I'm very naive when it comes to this, I'm asking just because I don't understand how it works.
I'll address it.
Go ahead, Kevin.
Yeah, I'll address that. Every fire department buys their own radios. Every fire department buys their own pagers. Years ago, the county used to buy the radios for the trucks. They don't do it anymore. So there's a big investment made. When the federal government did the narrow banding, we had till January of 2013 to change it. We were told you had to change all your pagers at $500 a pager, radios upwards $750 to $1,200 a piece. So the fire department has made a big big investment in these, and most of them are volunteers on very limited budgets, and you know, it's very difficult for them. But I think before you worry about, I know it's important to worry about costs, but before you worry about costs, you need to unless you're in one of those organizations, you don't understand what happens. When I leave my house, I don't know where I'm going. All I get is crackling over my pager, unless Mark has been fortunate to get the things tuned up. Sometimes I leave, I don't know. I mean, if a deputy gets out of a car in Warrensburg to chase somebody, he's never gonna get out. You know, that's happened 2 or 3 times. Or EMS, they had a call in Luzerne, where they couldn't, you know, they had to move the ambulance to communicate. And that's wrong. I mean, these are, a lot of it's volunteers, some of it's your police, and then they talk about the schools, which we don't think much of up here. But if you get inside the school, they're never gonna be able to call a county center. I don't believe what I heard in my limited knowledge of sitting in. You know, I'm glad to hear Danny talk about digital. You know, that's a little bit more above my pay grade than digital versus the analog, but a lot of organizations, and it also involves our county DPW. They're on the same radio system, and they're out.
And the town DPWs as
Town
well.
DPW as well.
County DPW, so it's a huge system that we're talking about here that, you know, needs to be upgraded, and it hasn't worked since 2004. It may be great for the greater Glens Falls area, which is even for, I understand down sometimes on Quaker Road, they can't even talk to the dispatch center. That could be because the radio antennas are interfering with one another. It's an investment we need to make, I believe. It's an investment we need to make if we're gonna protect our first responders.
And I'm not doubting there is an investment
But
that
there
needs to
is-
be made.
but
I
as far
assume that's why we're here.
As far as you ask about what they do, they spend their own money. Every fire department, fire district, EMS organization, they spend their own dollars.
What he referenced with the schools, you know, those are solid buildings and
Wow.
it's difficult getting out, but, and he said it exacerbates, you know, the weaknesses that you already had when they went to this narrow banding. But you take, we've always had problems in the city with the hospital, the elderly high rises, the Queensbury Hotel. So you're taking portable units in and have no communication back out to the truck. And they're asking, you know, that those facilities, he was speaking of schools, but those type facilities put repeaters in the building so they could get out to the trucks, get to the county center, et cetera. And those are the changes that need to be modified to get back to where you were, because you've lost that. And those are the difficulties that the emergency services are handling now. They had something, they've actually lost it, and it's critical.
I think repeaters, you know, when he was talking about the new repeaters when we had that meeting, there's a lot of, and I don't understand that stuff, but they have repeaters in some of the sheriff's cars. I mean, I know we're gonna make a purchase of a new fire truck. We're probably gonna have a repeater installed in it, just to improve our communication viability up there, you know, but we're very fortunate if we really know where we're going. And Mark has tried to help us when we put that tower up at the Orangeburg DPW, and it does repeat, but it's not perfection. But usually on most of the time, spotty, where you even know where you're going. You know you got a call, but you don't know what you're going to.
If you heard what he said, I know Frank heard it, but Stony Creek and Luzerne are a huge problem. And, unless you put up more towers, it's not gonna correct that problem, that's what I heard.
I don't think they look close enough to why, I think if you went through our, landfill transfer station, you might find a location that's along the river, that'll, shoot towards the town of Stony Creek, towards the main park where most people are. It'll also go back down the river towards the park in Lawrenceburg. And I believe it'll go down the river to Luzerne.
Yeah, well, I think that's basically what he's saying, the price that he was given, they didn't talk about putting a new one there, but if they're gonna correct Stony Creek and Luzerne, that would probably be someplace where they would put something like that.
But we mentioned the water tower, because I don't think we had every location, did we?
We did not, no.
I don't think, I mean, I sat in on some of these meetings, I mean, we have a water tower in Warrensburg, I think it's higher than the DPW, tower. You know, but I just don't know if it will work with the mountains behind it, but, and then there's a water tower in Luzerne, which I thought they had some antennas on, but I don't think they knew about that until we spoke to that, and I'm not sure what
or is it?
We took a tour of the Luzerne water tower site, and the antennas are not on the water tower. They're not? No, they're on a really nice tower. And there's tower buildings there, generator power, all that stuff is there. Mr. Molino took us up there and we got a chance to look at everything. And when I mentioned the fiber scenario to get to some of these sites without having to have line of sight, you know, a microwave that goes from one of your towers to another, a lot of these locations we just don't have that. We don't have line of sight. There is a company right now that is offering to public safety to put that fiber in for free. It's a grant system through President Obama's broadband initiative, and the dollars are there, and to put that in. The first 3 years would be free. After that, it's capped at $700 a month. That site also actually belongs to Saratoga County, and there you have the same problem. So now we're talking about, as we do in our consortium, we're talking about sharing, okay? We pay half, they pay half, whatever the scenario is. There's a number of sites that have been made available to us as a result of our membership in the consortium. The Black Mountain site, which the consultant says is great, I've already discussed that with the state police who own that site, and they're like, sure. So, you know, there's a lot of things here that we can do as the consortium expands and we get connections. All the sites in Saratoga County will have access to, and one of those is the one that's paging Luzerne right now.
Right.
Luzerne went to that site. So once we make that connection with the microwaves, then Warren County will have access to that site if we need to put equipment there. It's out there, but I do believe what they said, you know, initially we need to resolve the timing and those issues that we have right now.
Right, and that's what I was gonna add. When they talk in the near term, are they talking next year, is basically what they're talking about, or what's the...
I'm not sure, Mark, did you get a feel for them, what that kind of time frame would be?
I would say, you know, the short-term stuff is probably within the next 1 or 2 years. I guess while I'm talking, first off, with digital, all of our stations on the mountaintops are digital capable, but to upgrade a 10-year-old digital capable radio, or digital capable radio to digital, you might as well buy a new radio, okay? If we do life cycle replacements of either our patrol car radios, which are digital capable, or our mountaintop stations, you know, we're gonna stay with digital capable. So we'll have the door open there. However, the price to even do one channel, we looked into it. Let's just do one police channel with digital, and we can use one channel analog, one channel digital, same patrol car, same area. We'd be able to do a nice, you know, apples to apples type of comparison. But it's very expensive to make that jump to digital.
Is it possible to look at this in terms of what will have the biggest impact on the system, so that when we spend our money, we can say, well, this will have a big impact, this will have a smaller impact, and then direct our money to prioritize it based on, you know, what will have based on calls, based on what will, you know, enhance the system the most.
The slides that he has, the slides that are in the deck that we saw, we didn't see them all on this presentation because it's time limited, and so there's a few that just didn't show. But they do give you a pretty good indication of, you know, if you spend this much money, you're going to get this much coverage. There's no magic bullet to get real great coverage in Warren County. It's mountainous. People like to put their houses next to roads, and all the roads go through valleys. And with a valley, you got a hill right next to it. And if you're 2 hills away with your tower, it's very hard to get a signal in there. So like they had mentioned, you got to get your mouth close to somebody's ears in order to be heard, especially if you're carrying a little pager like I got in my pocket, and expect to get alerted while you're working down in your basement or you're in your man cave and there's a fire call. The repeaters and those types of things are going to be a help. And they've kind of put out to you that we're not gonna be able to get seamless coverage everywhere in the county, within a reasonable amount of money. So, we have to focus our money, efforts on operating centers. About a year ago, and that's why we did Warrensburg. Warrensburg was proposed to you folks as a receive-only site, but it's actually very close to becoming a full site. We looked at the differences between receivers for regular radios, which receive and transmit. We were able to kind of twist the arms of our vendors a little bit, save a little bit of money, and we have receivers and transmitters, and we just need to do a little bit of a upgrade on the rest of our system so we can put it into the simulcast. Right now it isn't, like Kevin said, their messages for Warrensburg Fire come after a fashion. We took some used equipment, repurposed it, and made it work so they get a little bit better pager coverage, but sirens, making their siren run better just doesn't address it. Some of their other communications issues, that doesn't address it. But, we do get much better talk-in coverage. If a foreman is out with his portable radio and he has trouble, he can key that radio and say, I need help. Now, they might not be able to talk back to him and say help's on its way, but at least have it back to the dispatchers.
What about the consoles too? I mean, is that in the town room? You're gonna have to replace all those?
They have a life cycle just like everything else. I think this past year was 40,000 calls that communications handled. That's not 40,000 radio transmissions. That's 40,000 incidents where they take a phone call, they run their pagers 2 or 3 times, they get voice communications back and forth from the fire engines or the rescue squad, ambulances, members. We're getting there, we're on the scene, we're leaving the scene, heading to the hospital, all that stuff. It's a lot of radio traffic. And I won't say, I don't have $6 million, but a typical fire engine is $500,000. And we're talking about the backbone, the stuff that gets that $500,000 to the right spot. So it's a considerable amount of money, but it's something that has to be looked at. Saratoga County spent quite a bit more on a digital system.
18 million.
Going back and forth for a lot of years, and unfortunately for Saratoga County, for a lot of the fire departments, for all the years, they were afraid to buy any equipment. They wouldn't buy batteries for their radios because they were afraid their radios would be obsolete the next year. But one of the first things they did once they finally got the contract signed in Saratoga County is they went from a single site paging system to a simulcast VHF paging system, and most of the first responders said, wow, this is great, why do we need digital? But they rolled out digital anyways. But their paging is done with a system similar to ours, just quite a bit newer with more sites.
Another thing, unfortunately, we have to deal with, also on a committee, that there are 17 states across the country that have to deal with the Canadian A line. Just like you have a blue line for the APA, the A line is a line that cuts across the top of the United States, and any radio licenses that you apply for above that line also require Canadian approval. Canadians don't approve anything. So getting licenses above that A line is incredibly difficult. It can be done. We've done it. We had to in 2004. The line runs, and lucky us, about halfway between Warrensburg and Chestertown. So anything north of that line, if we want to license frequencies on new towers, that's something we have to deal with. It's not the end of the world, but that's a 2 or 3 year process. So a lot of things to look at there, things that we would hope we don't have to deal with, the APA and all that, but from my personal opinion, as Mark says, I would like to see us at least accomplish the near items that they said, the items that we can do rather quickly in the next year. I would like to see us accomplish those, and that'll get us by until, if we decide we really wanna upgrade, or we wanna start upgrading, replace 25% of the equipment each year, and then actually go digital, whatever, that's another whole story, but we really do need to do what we can to improve what we have, and, then look at the, midterm. You agree with that, Mark?
Yeah, we're already in the kind of plans are in the works, and, things are being done to, they talked about, changing the antennas around a little bit, reorienting them, and, they call it a rollout for the simulcast. We're working on that. I hesitate to say we do it before winter, because I don't wanna run into the roadblock that we have every winter is after a while you can't get the sites anymore. So I don't wanna make a change and then say, oh, we should unmake this, we can't get people out. So that was probably, most of those will probably be done in the springtime. And also, because we do a considerable amount of, the work in-house, it's not gonna be as expensive as what they said. I'm not saying that we can get it done for nothing, but, they were talking about, tower sites being about $500,000. Did the budget for that, but, we're going to do what we can to, keep them as economical as possible.
Bud?
Yeah, I'm not sure I understand, when you look at that $6 million number, after hearing the chairman talk about the volunteer companies and how much they have to spend on all of this stuff, is that $6 million what the county would be responsible for, or is that the total project including what other people are gonna be responsible for?
The word, in dealing with grants or anything else, the word is subscriber equipment. Anything that's outside the actual base station infrastructure is called subscriber equipment. That's your cars, your fire trucks, all that kind of stuff. The subscriber equipment part of it is a big deal. You say, well, the county has X number of radios. Well, you add up the patrol cars, DPW, all the DPWs, each town would be in the middle of that. So subscriber equipment is something to think about. I believe, Mark, in that $6 million, that didn't include subscriber equipment, did it?
I believe I asked them, and I think it is on on one of their slides, I asked them to break out subscriber equipment from the big lump, because a lot of it is purchased by separate fire departments and squads, and, well, not so much by police departments, but, that is a separate thing. I don't think right now our coverage problems are caused by bad subscriber equipment. You might find a bad radio here or there, or a bad antenna, but, probably the problems that we should look at is, the backbone, the infrastructure, as Brian said. But it is, I think on one of the last slides that we looked at, they had take subscriber equipment and separated it from the rest of the monies that was,
So it's not part of that $6 million?
I think in total it was. I got an older slide here, just have to take a look and see if I can.
Sheriff, that is built into that $6 million.
So the subscriber is built in?
Roughly 1.8, this is, life cycle replacement subscribers and pagers.
So that would include all the fire departments?
It's an issue Saratoga County is going through, I'm not trying to put that down at all. When they built their new system, all digital, they bought everything. They bought all the equipment on the towers, and they gave each fire company a radio for each truck, 2 radios for their chief's cars, even though they all have 4 or 5 chiefs. They gave them 6 portables, I believe, even though they need 20. So, here's the fire company says, okay, we've given you this stuff so you can talk to us now, but if you want the rest of your people that have radios now to still have radios, you have to buy them yourselves. The portables are $3,000 a piece. The radios in the cars are about $1,800 to $2,000 a piece. So, there's things involved in what you say you're gonna provide for subscriber equipment and not. And the other big thing, and I know I've harped on this, and Kevin mentioned it, back when we had our low-band fire system, and the county provided that radio to every time somebody got a fire truck, it was an incredible problem for the county to own the radios in someone else's vehicle. Who's responsible to fix it? If they break the antenna off, is that belong to the fire company, or is that the county problem? And again, this may seem minuscule, but as you go down the road, you have to think about that. Essex County just issued all brand new radios for their system. And immediately the first thing that happened was, well, who's paying to install them? Well, one fire company said, well, we already did. The other fire company says, no, we don't have any money to do that. And then they did another $100,000 contract to install all the radios that they were just gonna hand out. There's a lot to it. I personally would prefer the county not be in the radio business. A suggestion would be, if you're gonna buy all the subscriber equipment, when you give it to them, they sign off and say, we have issued this piece of equipment to you, but now it is your responsibility. You know, we're not gonna continue to maintain that radio for the life of the radio, so. I know these are minor things, but they're things that we think about, when we look at all that stuff.
But you're talking about if you go digital.
If the county provides all the radios,
No, I'm
that is
talking
something
about
to think.
If you change the system over to digital, then you're talking about radio upgrades if you go digital.
You have to replace every radio if you have to go digital, with the exception of those that are P25 capable. And from what I know, there may be 4 or 5 of those radios out there amongst all the fire and EMS guys. So that's just not out there. The Synchrocast thing that he mentioned, I will mention that as of last week, we were notified that we have grant money to buy that Synchrocast equipment. If things go according to plan, it will be ordered on Friday. And at that point, the $80,000 Synchrocast piece of this puzzle that's in the near term, hopefully we will have that, and hopefully we get it in time, as Mark says, while we can still access the radio station. But that was good news that we did get that dollar.
All right, well, this has been quite a bit of information this morning. Sheriff, if you could see that everybody gets the slides sent out to them, I think that will help if we can review them a little bit slower and think about them. Chairman of the Budget Committee, Frank, would you like us to send that to the Budget Committee as well for your review? All right, if we could, well, it's going to cost some money. We may as well throw it in the Budget Committee for review as well, especially with the near term. It's been a long meeting. That being said, does anybody have anything real pressing for us this morning? If not...
I'd like to make a motion that the town of Hague pay for all of it.
All right, in that case then, motion to adjourn. Supervisor Gerard, and by Supervisor Frazier, all those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, everyone.